How do you take that next big step on your house hacking journey? On today's episode, we have a special guest who's going to share with us more about how he moved from analysis paralysis into taking action and how our team helped him end up in a home on the Central Coast. Hello, and welcome back to the Happy House Hacking Podcast, the podcast designed to help young people in California navigate the path to happy home ownership. I am your host, Owen Schwagerly. I'm a realtor, investor, and happy house hacker. And on today's episode, we have a conversation with one of our friends and past clients who's going to share with us more about his house hacking journey. So, hello, Erol. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your story, how you got into real estate, and share more about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Silicon Valley, lived about 20 years in LA. Part of that time around the beach area, Hermosa Beach, etc. At that time, I met some folks that were in real estate, and specifically, one of my first realtors actually was really big on an area of LA called West Adams, and I didn't think that it'd be a possibility to afford a home, let alone a duplex. But he was big on multifamilies, and he was really big on this like small area, actually historic, like one of the first neighborhoods in Los Angeles, called West Adams. And I mean, he couldn't stop talking about it. And so I needed to find out, more about this. At the time, I was living in Santa Monica, and so paying $2,000 in rent. Towards someone else's mortgage. And so, once I started talking to him and he brought me a handful of properties and we started diving into it, it was pretty clear that, this actually could work, and it does make sense.
Totally. Yeah, that's the challenge, right? It's always like, oh my gosh, California is so expensive. You're already paying a ton in rent, though. And so at the time, I mean, what were like house prices like?
Yeah. I mean, the first set of houses and multifamilies that we were looking at were around 700K. I think the top end was around a million. And, to talk about I'm going to go buy a $1 million home or $1 million property didn't make any sense to me. It was, outlandish. But again, once I dove into a little bit more of the math, it made a lot of sense. And I was fortunate, right? I had a good job. I had been saving. I'm pretty frugal, and so a lot of that kind of added to my comfort level diving into such a big investment and responsibility.
For sure. So tell us a little bit more about why you ended up picking what you picked and why, duplex. Like what was attractive about that to you?
Yeah, totally. So like I said, my buddy who was a real estate agent, he was huge on this area, West Adams. I compare it to Brooklyn in New York. A little gritty, but a cool place to go, a cool place to be. Lots of restaurants, next to tattoo shops and that kind of stuff. So it's a real gritty area, and it was a place where tons of up and comers, young folks at the time, like a lot of hipsters were trying to move into that area.
Follow the hipsters.
Yeah, totally,
That's a good
totally.
sign.
Absolutely. Um, at the time, this was around 2018. I met my now wife in 2017, and so any decision that we made needed to be the both of us. Luckily for me, she's kind of just up for anything. She's all down for an adventure, and so I always had her backing the whole way. But yeah, so we started looking in this West Adams area. I was working in Santa Monica, maybe 3 miles away from where I was renting at the time. And so West Adams is right along the train rail there, which was like recently put in Los Angeles. At the time, I think it had only been there for a few years. And so we were pretty set on one, West Adams, two, along that train rail so that I could get to and from work without, the crazy LA traffic.
Totally.
And so, and as I mentioned, this buddy of mine who was our real estate agent, he was huge on multifamily. Like, do not buy a single family home. And he was actually talking, 4 units, which I think is, it's the max that you can consider it non-commercial.
Right.
And so he was like, you got to look for triplexes, you got to look for fourplexes. That was, getting us towards the 1.25 mil area, which again, even more outlandish, especially at the time for us. And I think we were a little bit more comfortable with a duplex or with a triplex. And so we, hit the ground running. I created just crazy elaborate spreadsheet after learning a ton from him. Like, what do I look for in order to determine if something is a good investment versus a terrible investment? And with some of that math, just basically setting up formulas in a Google sheet. And we ended up, finding probably like I visited 40 different properties.
Wow.
Set foot inside. I probably went through 100 to 200 online, and I was in escrow on maybe three or four.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, we ended up finding one that checked all the boxes. We weren't afraid to walk away from some of the properties that we were in escrow on because,
Mm-hmm.
one thing or something else was not great about them. And we landed on a duplex in West Adams, walking, 7-minute walk from that train line, right next to a number of restaurants. And yeah, like I said, it really just checked off all the boxes. And you know, uh, going the duplex route, I think was nice for a first opportunity. I didn't get too much over my head. Um, but some of those other properties that we were in escrow on were 4 units, 3 units. But yeah, I'm super happy with what we landed on, and it worked great for us. We lived there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome, Errol. So it sounds like you were definitely taking a lot of time to do your research, do your due diligence, and hone in your criteria.
Yeah, absolutely.
So important to know, like, okay, where am I looking? What am I looking for? And you got really like super clear. I want to be near the railroad because then I can get in. And I love that because that's also a lifestyle move,
Yeah,
which a house is more than just a home. It can be an investment and it
absolutely.
can be a game changer for your lifestyle. So, how much time did you end up saving in your life, by having access to that railroad?
Yeah, it was great. So, like I mentioned at the time, I was working in Santa Monica, and so the commute driving from West Adams to Santa Monica, 12 miles was about an hour and a half generally.
Hmm.
The tram, taking the metro would take probably 16, maybe 25 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and this is pre-pandemic, so we're going into the office every day, hour and a half each way. I'm saving 3 hours every single day
Wow.
of my life.
Yeah, that's a game changer right there.
Totally. And yeah, like you mentioned, it's, not only a lifestyle decision for us, but we knew that with the duplex, there was an exit strategy. So not only are we going to live there and rent out the second unit, but also we knew that eventually we were going to move on from that property and rent out both. And so we knew that having the property next to a metro would actually attract a lot more folks that are
Hmm.
into that type of lifestyle because of the vibe of that neighborhood.
Totally. Yeah, that is so powerful. Now, you did a lot of research and the phrase analysis paralysis.
I know it too well. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Like, did that happen to you during the process or not? Because it sounds like, you were taking action at the same time. You were touring properties, there's 40. Then you're writing offers, you're under contract 4 times, you canceled escrows. So like tell us about your journey and like if there was any analysis paralysis along the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I said I'm, too familiar with that because
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm really an overthinker, and so I dive in deep. I do tons of research. I need to know basically all bits of information about something before I make a decision, and that's not possible at all when you're in this game. Um, and like I said, I was lucky to have my wife at the time because she is down for anything. She will say, "Pull the trigger." You've done all the research. You've done all the math. You've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. Dive in. It's time to dive in. And so that was a big, a big help for me. The other thing is, I think, analysis paralysis is because it's not because you don't know if you're making the right decision. It's because you fear making the wrong decision. And uh, oftentimes, I don't know that there is a wrong decision. If you are diving in and doing your due diligence, there's just the decision that you made, and there's the decisions that you didn't make, right? um we are able as people, to just kind of go with the flow, right? Like, if you make a decision, you stick with it, and your life adapts to the decision that you made. And so having that mindset, I think, really helps. I'm glad we didn't land on those other homes or those other properties that we were in escrow on, but had we, that would have just been the decision that we made, and that would have been great.
Mhm. Totally. Now, I'm so curious to hear about this agent because I mean that's awesome that he was out there like preaching to people like you got to do this. This is where you got to be. Don't buy a house, buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex. And that's so much the heart behind our podcast. We're out there telling people like, yes, do the house hack, find an investment strategy that makes you income so you can afford to live in California. So we're totally aligned with that. Now, was this agent also house hacking?
Yeah, absolutely. So, he was smart. He got in early when basically banks were paying you to take out loans. And so he was, maybe in like South Central buying properties. He did a lot of Section 8. But he actually, oddly enough, was never a house hacker himself. The thing, that's interesting is some folks, especially I think I mentioned at the time, we were living at the beach. We were renting apartments, tiny apartments just to have a good time. We were in our 20s. And so then you're thinking a little bit more about like, what's the fun thing to do or what's comfortable? And, I would say that he probably wouldn't be comfortable having a neighbor sharing a wall with them or something like that. Um, but certainly, he knew that we were those people. And he helped tons of people, and in his firm there was a number of others that also helped us, and some of them were much more of that mindset.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, certainly, the guy's a hustler, and I'm certainly, glad that he helped us hustle in this instance.
I love that. Yeah, it's good to hear because who you work with matters so much in a real estate transaction.
Totally.
And not every agent's gonna explain the benefit. And he was really great at explaining where you should be and what you should be buying. So that's awesome. So then what about financing at the time? Did you get one of those lower down payment programs or were you full 20% or how did that look for you?
Yeah, no, I wish I would have known now what, or I wish I would have known then what I know now, but I just went with a traditional bank, like the bank that I've been banking with since I was a teenager. I did a regular 20% down payment. The terms were okay. I think at the time we were around 5.5%, something like that. But, yeah, I didn't know I didn't know much then, and so I went with the safe bet, which is just a traditional bank, no mortgage broker. Um, and, timing is everything. This was 2018 when we bought the house. We were able to make it work,
Mhm.
and then the pandemic hit, and in 2021, I was able to refinance using a mortgage broker, and I got it down to, I think, 2.75%, which was just a game changer.
Totally. Yeah. Saved a lot on that payment, I bet.
Totally. And actually, what's crazy is my actual like mortgage lender, the one that worked for the traditional bank, he said, "Look, I'm you don't want to go through a refinance with me. I'm not going to be able to touch any of these numbers. We're only focusing on commercial at the moment
Mhm.
because of X, Y, and Z. It just the math didn't work for them." And he's the one that introduced me to this mortgage broker.
Nice.
And yeah, another hustler who was kind of open to helping out those around him, and he made the connection, and yeah, meeting that person was huge in getting that refinance, and making it possible for us to really almost effortlessly move out, rent out both units,
Mhm.
and make a profit, as opposed to being a little bit restricted or tied to that property
Totally.
that would limit our future possibilities, like moving to the Central Coast.
For sure. So tell us more about becoming a landlord, right? How was that experience for you? Because you're sharing a wall, right? It's a duplex. So what was that setup like? And then how did you enter the landlording process?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of the property in Los Angeles was it actually didn't share walls. They were
Oh,
2 separate units.
nice.
Yeah, it was close. I'd say there was maybe, 20 feet
Mhm.
between the units. One of them was built in 1927, the other one was built in 2015. So the owners before us are the ones that put up that big unit. I think they had their parents living there. Um, but having that distance was great because you could pretend as though it was just a single family home.
Mhm.
Um, we were, my wife and I were moving from apartments. So going into a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, let's call it 800 square foot home was a luxury for us. And then we had this, 700 square foot unit in the back. Again, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. We started out, this is before any of the Airbnb restrictions were put in place in Los Angeles. So we started out doing short term rental and I loved it. I am a big fan of traveling. And so it was almost like bringing the traveling to me.
Yeah.
I loved hosting. I'm kind of particular. And so I like the idea that after someone is there for a week, I can go in and kind of clean up and kind of check
Mhm.
out, make sure everything's good to go. Yeah, I really liked the whole process. We had a dog at the time, and so it was fun for our Airbnb guests to come in and get greeted by Goose, our dog. Yeah, I loved every bit of it. The kind of the chase to get that 5-star review.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and the marketing was great too. I love doing that.
were you renting out the newer unit?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We were living in the main or front home, and we were renting out the unit in the back. Built in 2015. There wasn't much maintenance needed for that, which was great. Having been at the time it was 3-4 years old. So yeah, we were fortunate there, but it was great. I really loved it. I look back and I really had a good time there. Now it gets tiresome after a while, um, especially when you're considering that. Let's say that Airbnb is on average, every week you got to go in there and do something. And maybe 10% of the time, someone ruins something
Mhm.
that you have to fix before the next guest arrives, or else, again, that chase for that 5-star review isn't going to happen.
Right.
And so I'd say after about, I don't know, a year or so, and it was right along with the restrictions that Los Angeles started, um, we decided, okay, we need to move to a little bit more of a permanent rental situation. And we did. And we ended up finding a couple with a young child. I think at the time he was 6 months old when they moved in. And again, it was great. We got along with the couple. We shared a backyard area. Our dog was playing with their 6-month-old son.
Aw.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, again, it just both worked out. Luckily, my wife and I are both pretty open-minded people, so we weren't, there wasn't anything that was really uh, annoying or something that we couldn't live with. And we loved, meeting all those folks through temporary rental. We loved meeting and being so close with the couple that moved in. Um,
Mhm.
more. I think it was a year, maybe a year and a half lease that we had with them. And it was just a great experience.
Awesome. So let's talk about your next move. So you relocated from Los Angeles to the Central Coast. Like, how and why did that happen?
Yeah, totally. So my family is from Silicon Valley, and they live near Monterey County. My wife grew up in Shell Beach, and so SLO County. The pandemic was in full swing. It was 2022. Um, I was working remotely, and my work is in tech. And so, why were we in LA? All of our friends were, married and they were having kids, and it wasn't those years at the beach when we're in our 20s anymore. And it just all signs were pointing to it's time for us to settle down. I had proposed to my wife, um, and so we knew that we were, moving closer to family to start a family. And we thought, what a great place it would be if we could be close to both of our families, um, you know, and kind of have that help in order to help us along our way, to start that journey. So yeah, that's how I connected with y'all. I could tell from the get-go that we were like-minded, and that I could trust while being at a distance that you not only had our best interests in mind, but were looking for what I would be looking for if I was here. And so, yeah, that's kind of what had us start looking in the Central Coast, and it was a great move.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we're so happy we got to connect. It was on Bigger Pockets
Yeah,
where we first connected
yeah,
and stuff.
absolutely. And connecting with you through that site, obviously we'd be like minded.
Definitely.
And then it was pretty insane. I think we moved, and then a couple weeks later we got married, and then a couple months later I changed jobs again.
Yeah.
Still in tech, still in remote work. So it all
Mhm.
worked out. But boy, that was a lot of life changes all at once.
I know. Yeah, they talk about the biggest stressors in life: moving, getting married, death, job, career. Like you had like
Yeah, children,
all
absolutely.
of them, like
Totally.
right there. That year was a lot.
Yeah, yeah. It was a lot. But again, having my wife by my side really eased that stress and that pain, and we kind of just went with it. And again, being easygoing really helps. There was tons of challenges, not only for the two of us, but also externally with the house and renting out both of those units in LA, and upkeep and all that kind of stuff. But you have to have the mindset that it'll all work out. There is no bad decision. There's just the decision you made, and you go with it and you make the
Mhm.
best of it.
Totally. So you were able to keep your LA property, which was the goal.
Yep.
And so many people think that they want to do it, yet they just, usually you might need the equity or something. So how did you guys make it work where you were able to keep that place and still make that move?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, and again, I know that I'm in a fortunate position to have the job that I had, etc. So, being a frugal person, I was able to save up a lot. We were making money on even living in the one unit and renting out the other. Um, the refinance was huge. So, the
Mhm.
refinance brought us from, maybe $3,000 mortgage to, I think at one point, not including any other expenses or taxes or anything like that, it was like $1,800 a month.
Oh, wow.
So, it was great. So those things helped. We lived there for 4 years.
Mhm.
So we had 4 years to save. Um, and that last year when we started looking around, it became more realistic, and
Mhm.
we felt okay, like this could happen, and it did happen.
Totally. That's awesome. Then what were you guys looking for in the next place? You wanted another house hack, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit harder in the Central Coast to find duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes compared to Los Angeles. It's
Mm.
probably harder to find a little of everything on the Central Coast because it's just so crowded down in LA. But we knew we wanted to step up in terms of our comfort and in terms of our location and the size of the home, the size
Mhm.
of the property. We wanted a yard. We had 2 dogs at this point. And we were considering kids and what's going to come next. We need more space.
Mhm.
And so specifically, I think what we were looking for was something that could give us that and check all of those boxes, but also had the potential to repeat what brought us to that successful point. And what we found was something that isn't necessarily a traditional multifamily, but it was a single family home that had the potential to have multiple units. And what we found was essentially a single family home with a converted 2-car garage that was converted into a den in the 60s,
Mhm.
and another exterior unit that was coined a bathhouse or a pool house that was next to the pool. And so these existing structures had a lot of potential and have a lot of potential. And so finding that was huge. Also, it didn't hurt that it was, almost 3/4 of an acre and, 3 bedroom, 2 bath that we were very, comfortable with. We knew we'd be very comfortable there.
Totally. That's the beauty of it, and you saw the vision and the potential of what this property could be, because most people would look at it and say, "Oh, well, there isn't a unit here right now, so, it doesn't work for me. I want a house with the ADU, detached, ready to go."
Totally. Totally. Turnkey, right? They want to be able to just move in and now the whatever other unit is there is automatically making money. And that's great if you can find that, but you're going to be paying for that.
Mhm.
Um, the potential I think is something that you'll need to have vision in order to see. And don't be afraid to walk away from a handful of opportunities because there's always going to be one, right around the corner.
Totally. Yeah, and there was even a house we looked at that ended up having some foundation issues. Do you remember that one
Oh,
house?
totally, totally. And, again, this is the trust that we put into you all. We didn't know this neighborhood from that neighborhood. And I remember there was a point I said, "Oh man, this is great. It's got a massive, shop on it that I think was bigger than the house. It's got a great house. It was in a cool neighborhood, but I would say I didn't know anything about it, but probably not a place where you would go by. And I was getting that feeling, and I think even maybe y'all told me a little bit like, "Oh, but this other area over here, you should check out over there." And,
Right.
uh, boy, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but looking back, it's funny that we were considering that to be a better opportunity than, what we landed on, and that's that balance between the knowledge that y'all brought to the table and, the mindset that we brought to the table. And again, it worked out
Mhm.
as
It
it worked
totally
out,
did.
right?
It was it's substantial, like 50 or $100,000 foundation
It was
issues.
$230,000.
2 yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's like
I think the main home was about 130,000 and the rest was that,
that's right. Yeah.
external shop.
It totally needs a
And
lot of work.
and it's in a neighborhood that is known to have foundation issues
Right.
because of the soil,
Being
content
expensive
and
and yeah.
absolutely. And, those are things that if you're interested in that kind of stuff the way I am, it helps to know those types of things.
Mhm.
Um, it'll help you reduce risk and give you better chances to be successful.
Yeah. There was a lot of hair on that deal with the tenant situation and
That's right.
all the other complications, but,
Yeah.
it totally worked out. We're so happy you landed where you
We did.
landed.
Absolutely.
And so, a lot of what this podcast is all about is how to help people find a happy home and make a happy home. So we're, investing in real estate, but it's also about lifestyle. So tell us a little bit more about some lifestyle things you've enjoyed since moving to the Central Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm big on balance. My work is stressful, and so I need my relaxation to balance that out. I've noticed that tenfold moving to the Central Coast. Coming from Los Angeles, it couldn't be much more of a stark difference. So the stressors of city life, I think, is something that really the Central Coast took away from us, and I really love that. Being closer to family is huge. The fact that now we don't have to, make a plan weeks ahead of time and drive 5 hours, 6 hours to see our families. That's huge. We're 90 minutes from my wife's family or from my family and 30 minutes from my wife's family. Um, it's just a much more laid back atmosphere. The vibe is more along the lines of what our vibe is, and that's been really great as well. I have fruit trees. I get to wake up in the morning and eat plums during the summer. I couldn't do that, or I wasn't doing that in Los Angeles. And there's something to be said about being able to do that and the pride and the joy that you get from that. A plum from your own yard doesn't taste the way a plum tastes from the grocery store. It just doesn't.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, Erol, we're so glad to have you on and get to hear your story because it's really incredible. The fact you were able to house hack and make yourself be uncomfortable for that season of time, set yourself up for profitability where you're able to now have properties producing income for you and building equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really appreciate y'all helping us along that way.
Well, thank you so much, Erol, for joining us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review on whatever platform that you listen. And then please go ahead and share this episode with someone who you think would get some value out of it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And we wish you all a great rest of your day. And we'll see you next time.